Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording from our June 2024 Scholar in Residence weekend with Rabbi Mikie Goldstein. This learning session is titled From Prejudice to Pride, LGBTQ Challenges and Advances in Israel.
I can see at least here there are no children, because I want to start with a midrash that might be a bit risque about tzitzit, which is in this week's parsha, and we'll read it next year, but we read it every day, twice a day, the third paragraph of the Shema. And there's a midrash that talks about tzitzit, like why do we have the tzitzit? It says to remind us to do the mitzvot, and the midrash obviously has a good sense of humor. And it tells a story of a man who went to a house of ill repute. He was on his way there, and all of a sudden the tzitzit start moving. As he gets nearer, they start slapping him in the face, and then he realizes and he turns around. And so I bring that up because, whether we wear tzitzit or not, certainly when we put on our talit, we get reminded of a mitzvot and things to do, and hopefully our Judaism in general is supposed to make us better people. So on a very personal note, when I was basically turned away from being able to celebrate Judaism as I liked because I'm a gay man, that was very hurtful. I made, I wouldn't call them sacrifices in my life, but I made my life in a certain way so that I could live what I believe to be a good Jewish life. And suddenly, the Jewish world around me, first of all in the UK, and then in Israel, even at the time, the Masorti conservative world in the 90s when I came out properly, in the conservative world, there was the wonderful tshuva, yes, we love you, but, right, you can't become rabbis and we won't do unions for you. And this type of turned me away. It was like, if you're not welcome somewhere, then what are you going to do? What was nice, I made Aliyah to Jerusalem in '89, and I immediately found a group of other I'm going to call them religious LGBTQ people. They were Orthodox and Reform and conservative. And we were able to do Shabbat together. And, I still had my family, my sister, who already lived in Israel, I would go to often. But, for example, on her kibbutz, which is a Bnei Akiva religious kibbutz, when they found out that I was gay, they stopped offering me an aliyah, things like that in shul that I would occasionally get when I was there. And then, you go shul hopping when you go to a new place and you're looking for somewhere that's accepting, and it was really difficult. And so I went off the derech, as they say, for a number of years. It was the easy way out, but it wasn't something I was happy with. And it was very important for me to find Masorti Judaism, which even though in 2002, when I found it in a big way in Israel, and started to go to my shul, the official line was still that LGBTQ people are not fully accepted, as in going to rabbinical school, etc. But things were already in the change. And as many of you might know, in 2006, the law committee, the CJLS, passed one of a number of tshuvot that said that, yes, we don't just like you, but you can be full members of our Jewish world. You can go to rabbinical school, and we will do unions for you. And it took a few more years, but then now there's also official conservative unions. They don't call it they don't call it kiddushin, but there's liturgy for same-sex weddings, which is it's very meaningful to me that not only am I accepted, but that the liturgy follows that as well. And in my experiences, first of all, why did I go to JTS and not to the Schechter Rabbinical School in Jerusalem, which would have been a lot easier and certainly a lot cheaper? The tshuva was in 2006, or that's when the policies changed in Ziegler here and at JTS. But at the Shechter Rabbinical School, they were holding out. The people leading it were, one of them was actually anti-gay, the dean at the time, a woman who was had to struggle to be accepted to Shechter Rabbinical School to study as a woman a number of years beforehand. She even wrote an article in one of the national papers, Yediot Achronot, saying that the children must have both a male and a female parent, and that, against gay marriage and certainly against gay adoption. And so not only was there no point in even applying because of their policy of not accepting gays and lesbians, but why would I want to go to a school that had people like that? That changed whilst I was already at JTS. In fact, my story of getting to JTS is that I was working for Masorti in development back in 2009, and I met with a cohort of students from Ziegler and JTS to take them around some of our projects. And this was the first cohort that had gay and lesbian students. And I was speaking with them and some of their colleagues, some of them are since friends, and saying, yeah, I'd love to go to rabbinical school. This is the point I'd go to in my life, but I can't. And it was like, I could say I want to go and not have to do it because I couldn't go. And I'd reached this point being involved in my shul, and I spoke about that, I think, at lunchtime. I've spoken to so many people and so many things, I'm not sure who I said what to. But basically being involved in my Masorti shul, and I've seen the movement on a national level, and wanting to be more involved religiously, and being a leader of the Jerusalem Open House for Pride and Tolerance, which is the LGBTQ center in Jerusalem, and not having had the role models that I wanted, all this was leading me to, I think I should take that step and become a rabbi. And I couldn't do that in Israel. I didn't want to go to HUC, the reform school. It wasn't what I thought would be a good fit. And so I could get away with saying I'd love to go to rabbinical school and not have to actually follow through. But they ratted me out to the dean in JTS, Rabbi Danny Nevins, one of the authors of the Tshuva, together with Rabbi Dorf as well, and Rabbi Avram Reisner, that allows for LGBTQ people to be full part of our world. And he called me up and he said, I'm going to be in Jerusalem in a few weeks' time. I hear you're interested in rabbinical school. Let's talk. That was November 2009 and September 2010. I was at JTS. And I had 4 wonderful years. And what was especially important to me, I know some of the first students, the first gay and lesbian students, or 2 in particular, had a particularly hard time at JTS being accepted. It was like they were the first year, and it appeared that a number of faculty didn't know how to, take them in and make them feel at home. By the time I got there in 2010, it was a different story. When we had a class learning kiddushin about weddings from the Talmud, etc. And the professor asked me so you write about what would a gay wedding look like, according to these laws that we've seen, and in other classes as well. It became part of the, if you like, part of the curriculum even, that you talk about same-sex unions and single parents and other issues like that. There was one person who couldn't follow through on that, but most of the professors were very much on board by then. When I came back to Israel, and I was finishing up in May 14, and so in January I happened to be in Israel, and I interviewed in my shul that they were just looking for a rabbi in Rehovot, and got the job, etc. So I started in August, and in September they had an installation. They obviously were worried I might go, so they did the installation very quickly. The next day it was reported, first of all, in the Jerusalem Post, that Masorti appoints first out gay rabbi. So I didn't want to be labeled. It's like, I'm not the gay rabbi, I'm a rabbi who is gay. But my shul got the board of the shul got rather upset. It wasn't Masorti who appointed him, it was us. We took him on. And that was really very heartwarming. But it wasn't all plain sailing. when someone speaks, give a drasha, they often mention something more personal about their family members, my husband, my wife, whatever, my children. And a couple of times I mentioned my partner. And in Hebrew, everything is gendered, so it was very obvious when I say ben zug for partner. And there were a couple people on the board who said, we're fine with you being gay, but don't put it out there. And that was a very difficult moment for me. It type of shut me down for a bit. And I didn't say anything personal for a number of months, about anything, never mind about my partner. And then another case, I think it's 5 years ago now, in Rehovot, where my kehillah is, we had the first Pride March in Rehovot, right? It's been in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, I'll talk about that soon. And then more and more places are doing some form of march or some form of happening for Pride. And I suggested to the board that perhaps, well, actually, it was one of, we had two co-chairs of the board at the time, and I spoke with one of them, and she suggested to the board that we should march as the shul in the Pride Parade to show support for LGBTQ people in Rehovot. And there were, again, a couple board members, one in particular, the same one who complained last time, who said, I don't think it would be good because then everyone will think we're the gay shul. I think things have got a little better since then, but he was fine with the fact we should march with Masorti banners or something like that. So, and he was also fine with the fact that I offered the shul as a meeting place for the organizers of the parade. So people in Rehovot know that not only is there a gay rabbi in the conservative shul, not the rabbi anymore, but a rabbi in the shul. But they also know it's a place they can come to. We've had plenty same-sex couples who've come to do bar bat mitzvah for their kids with us, and they feel very much at home, and the members make them feel at home. But there was just this sense amongst a few of the members, or especially a couple of people on the board, that we would get labelled. And it's difficult for me to be the person to move them beyond that. It's like, it's my interest to move them beyond that. But how much can I push? Will it be seen as, as one-sided or something like that? But some of our younger members, we've had quite a few same-sex couples and some transgender people as well. So, the majority are still cisgender, straight, and etc. All the words that like to be bandied about. But we're open, and I think we're making progress on those other people who had problems. For 3 years, I was involved in organizing the Pride Parade in Jerusalem. It started back in 2002. I was living in Israel at the time, but I was away just when it happened the first time. But then I took part every year that I was still in the country, and I became involved in the Jerusalem Open House, and I was on the board, and for 3 years I was the chairman of the board. And Jerusalem, as you know, is a very complex city. It's about a third Orthodox, with many of them being ultra-Orthodox, a third Arab, mainly Muslims, and then a third more secular, traditional. And the first years, when I was not so much in the organizing part, there were demonstrations by Haredi groups against the parade. There was a lot of pressure on the Jerusalem City Council. But after a few years, the actual Haredim coming out to stand in front of us, and demonstrate, that went down because they noticed that their children started to ask them questions. What does the word gay mean? And maze homo, what's a homo, which is a nice word for gay in Hebrew, although it was sometimes used as derogatorily, but we've reclaimed it. And that the children in Haredi world were like inquisitive. They were like, they had these pashkavil. They put out these type of ads. Sorry, posters, right? About all sorts of things. And one of them was, "Don't go to that parade and keep away from it." And it's a toiva, it's an abomination and all that. But they saw that if they put that information out there, then their people start asking questions and seeing that there are other things out there in the world. So they toned down, and we had connections with certain rabbis to try and make sure that there wouldn't be any major problems. One of the big problems we had was with the city council. When there's a pride parade, there are flags all over the place. And a couple of years, the Jerusalem City Council, even though they get paid by the open house to do this, they refused to put up the flags. And we went to court, and the courts are always in our favor. This is similar to the pluralistic Jewish world in Israel and also the LGBTQ world, that when we go to court, we generally are able to win, or at least reach a compromise so that it doesn't have to go to the full way. There's very little legislation on Jewish pluralism. There's very little legislation on LGBTQ rights as well. And there was one year when we'd gone to court and we won. They had to put the flags up. They put them up on the morning of the parade. It was on the Thursday afternoon. And at the back of the parade, the stragglers, they were followed by the guys in the big things that go up and take the flags down. It was like minimal time. It's since got a little bit better, but it's always a struggle in Jerusalem. But it's important for, there are obviously Haredi men and women who are LGBTQ. And one amazing thing at the Jerusalem Open House is that they're able to come there. Some of them come in full garb. Some of them find a place to get changed first. But they're able to go there, not all of them, only some of them, and find a way to meet other people. There's a story told by one of the parents. They had I think they still have, once or twice a week, there's a couple parents at the Jerusalem Open House, and any younger people can come and speak to them, and they're parents of LGBTQ children themselves. And so they can be helpful to these youngsters who are coming in and not getting the help they need at home. And there was one case of a Haredi guy who came in, probably like 18, 19, and he said, "I don't know what to do. I'm the only one in my yeshiva, the only one in my world who has feelings for men." And it was a mother. She said to him, "Well, next time you talk about girls, no, we don't talk about girls." She said, "No, I bet you do talk about girls." And yeah. It's like, well, next time there's a talk about girls, look around to see if there's anyone else who's zoning out like you do. And if so, see if you can approach them. And apparently it worked. And this guy found someone else we could talk to, a peer. And, I don't know what happened to the guy in the end, but the importance of having not just somewhere to go, but people to speak to, and the importance of having such a center in Jerusalem, like in Tel Aviv, much more open, still needed, but it's a different need. In Jerusalem, it's really life-saving. The Haredi person who is completely lost in their own world has nowhere to turn to. And if they do turn to their rabbi, the rabbi will most likely tell them to find a woman and get better, or even send them off to reparative therapy, which we all know is very dangerous. So there's a lot of life-saving work going on, even though we don't always realize it. But just some conversations can really help people along. I'd be happy if there's any questions as well. I just want to talk about one other thing, and that is, my ex, but I met him back in Israel, and he was in the foreign ministry. And when he actually got accepted to the foreign ministry, he had to lie about being gay. He actually was, what it was thought to be a security risk if someone is gay, because no one knows that they're gay, and then they can use that against them. So there was like a reason for it, but if someone is out, then, then that wouldn't be a problem. But he was actually, had to go through a lie detector, and I think the guy just said, oh, okay, I'll pass you, or whatever. And they literally would ask. But then the following year, there was someone else who was being accepted to the ministry. There's like a course that people do. And he was openly gay and had a partner already at the time, because this was before my partner and I were together. And he said, well, yeah, I'm gay, but that's not a problem. He went to Yossi Beilin, who was the foreign minister at the time, and he managed to get to him and say, look, we need to change this. And they changed the policy. And so by that time, I was already with my ex, and so he like told them one day, yes, I'm also gay and whatever, and it was all okay. But we were the first gay couple to go abroad officially, and that was like complicated. It's like, what do they put in? So you get a diplomatic passport as the spouse of. What do they put in my passport? How do they write that? Our first posting was in Rio. So first of all, the Orthodox rabbi, once he heard about this before we arrived, he went around and signed people up on a petition against the foreign ministry sending a gay couple to Rio. The consul general told him what he could do with that petition, so it did not go far at all. But the country of Brazil did not recognize gay couples at the time. So how can I get my papers? And so the foreign ministry was actually really good, and they appointed me as a local vice consul, so that would allow the foreign ministry there in Brazil to issue me with all the correct papers, etc. And so I could actually live there and work there. I think the best part was that, like, the Jewish community was this is in 1995, the Jewish community there was like, oh, I don't know, will we speak with them, and like, we went to the Reform shul, they were okay. We went to the conservative shul there, they were okay as well. And within time, they met us, they saw that we were normal people, that we weren't trying to make more people into gays and lesbians or whatever. And so much so that at the end, we got invited by the Witzer women just before we left to give us a goodbye send-off. And I think that, we were both helpful back in Israel as being, of course, it was reported in the paper, a gay couple gets sent abroad, but also helping in Jewish community there in Rio, certainly, to be more accepting. And it's sometimes difficult when you're in that position. It's like, I just want to live my life. I don't want to be, I just want to do my job and have a good time. Like, Rio's a good place to have a good time. It's like, but sometimes these things just come, and you've got to be there, and and it's helpful for people in the future as well. So much so in Bnei Akiva in England, a few years after, I was very involved in Bnei Akiva there, and my final year I actually worked for the movement for Bnei Akiva there in England, and I was closeted, but I think certainly all my friends knew that I was gay. Then a few years later, there was someone who was already more or less out in London, and he wanted to get a job working for Bnei Akiva as well. And he said, well, Mikie used to work, so why can't I? That again was very heartwarming. It's like, I didn't do anything, but it was helpful to someone else. And certainly the younger generation in England, I don't know about in Israel, but the younger generation of Bnei Akiva people who my niece and nephew were involved in that, they're now grown up, certainly were much changed. So is there an Arab or Muslim LGBT presence at Jerusalem Open House? We started, it was in my time, before I was the chair, but I was involved in the fundraising there, and we wrote a proposition to set up an Arab group, which we set up. after about 3-4 years, they went independent. It's called Al-Kaos, which means the rainbow. It went independent because of political reasons. It was difficult for them to continue and also be in contact with other Muslim groups around the world if they were part of a Zionist organization, although Jerusalem Open House is like very quiet on politics to give people space. But yeah, and that was also an amazing thing to be part of. Right. So how can gays and lesbians get married in Israel? So basically, Israel only has religious marriage, which means if you're Jewish, it's only sanctioned by the specific Orthodox rabbis, which is a lot of Orthodox rabbis, but not any Orthodox rabbi can do the wedding. They have to be sanctioned by the Ministry of Religious Affairs. And so, but the way Israel works is that if you get married abroad civilly, then because Israel is part of agreements, Israel recognizes civil marriage from abroad. So just as some straight couples might go to Cyprus or other places, so anyone who gets, any same-sex couple who get married civilly abroad, that is a national thing. So like it'd have to be federal. Like when only New York and Massachusetts and California were doing weddings, it wasn't recognized in Israel. But the moment it became federal, then Israel recognizes that, and the couple can be registered as married in the Ministry of the Interior, and of course no Orthodox rabbi would count that as anything. We do same-sex weddings in the conservative movement and obviously in the reform movement, and there's also a secular movement that does ceremonies for people. And but there is also if two people live together for a certain amount of time and they can show that they have the same address, they have a bank account together, then they can get most rights of married couples, even if they're not religiously or civilly married. So that counts for gays and lesbians as well. Adoption. So if a gay couple wants to adopt, they will get the most difficult child that no one else wants. It's really problematic in that area. But one area where adoption is involved is if same-sex couple, one is the parent, the biological parent, then the other one can automatically adopt that child which is a child of their union. Just biologically, it couldn't be from both parents. So that does work, but like for regular adoptions, say a gay couple doesn't want to go down the route of artificial insemination for women or for men to do surrogacy, which both are really expensive, and certainly surrogacy is not possible in Israel yet for gay couples. They want to adopt. It's a great thing to adopt kids, but it's very difficult.
So the surrogate has to be abroad.
Yeah. Because people do in the States, they used to do in India, that closed down, then there's somewhere else, and that closed. Georgia, the country Georgia, and it becomes really expensive. So if you want to do surrogacy, you have to be really rich in Israel. So I said I wanted to live my life, and yet I'm coming up against all these difficulties of being a Masorti rabbi, being a gay rabbi, just being gay in Israel. Apparently, I find it invigorating. I'm here talking to you about it. It does give a lot of meaning to what I'm doing, but there are times when you don't want to be, whether it's a poster boy or a mascot or whatever, but I believe in, if it says in Pirkei Avot that if I can't remember exactly, if there's no man, then be a man type of person. Doesn't mean the male thing, but you got to stand up sometimes if no one else is doing it, and sometimes I'm not even just standing up, I'm just being me, but it ends up being something like that. It certainly gives my life a lot of meaning, and I sometimes get embarrassed about it as well, but I think that's good. That keeps me in my place as well.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.